All right, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war has taken a complicated turn, with recent events escalating tensions and raising concerns about potential retaliation from Moscow. This, as Russia said that it thwarted a massive attack on Crimea by intercepting American missiles. Our next report explains the latest developments and examines the implications for possibly a broader conflict and the potential involvement of NATO member states.
The battle is raging for the control of Kharkiv. Ukrainian troops are in retreat, while Russia claims it's advancing in North and South Ukraine. The Ukrainian army is under intense pressure for the past week, fighting off a surprise Russian offensive in Kharkiv while grappling with critical ammunition shortages.
It is too early to draw conclusions, but the situation is under control. Our soldiers are destroying the occupier who is trying to advance. Everything is quite tense.
Under fire, Ukraine is stepping up attacks on Russian targets. Russia claims to have shot down 10 Ukraine-launched ATACMS missiles over Crimea, a territory that Moscow annexed from Ukraine in 2014. Moscow has repeatedly warned it will retaliate if Ukraine targets Russian-controlled Crimea with longer-range US and British missiles. The Pentagon initially opposed the long-range missile deployment, fearing Ukraine will use them to attack targets deep inside Russia. But now, those concerns have taken a back seat. The Biden administration says Ukraine can decide for itself if it wants to strike Russian territory with US weapons. But so far, Washington has not encouraged such attacks.
We have not encouraged or enabled strikes outside of Ukraine, but ultimately, Ukraine has to make decisions for itself about how it's going to conduct this war. A war it's conducting in defense of its freedom, of its sovereignty, of its territorial integrity.
As the West watches closely, Russian President Vladimir Putin heads to Beijing. The visit will put China and Russia's no-limits friendship to the test. US has cautioned China to stop backing Moscow's war efforts. Bureau Report WION World is One.
For more on this, Mathieu Droin, who is a visiting fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Welcome to WION, Mathieu. So it seems that the war is getting more complicated. My question to you is, do you think it is, considering the fact that Russia has warned against using long-range missiles, and the U.S. says that it's up to Ukraine to decide how to use American weapons?
Yes, thanks for having me. Well, I think it doesn't really change the equation. On the U.S. side, there might be an inflection in the language, but there is no official change of the position in the sense that there is no encouragement to target Russia infrastructure in Russia with the new long-range strike missiles that are being delivered to Ukraine. So there have been strikes on Crimea, which is a disputed territory, but it's not recognized as internationally as part of Russia. Russia might consider that it's part of its territory, and that's why it alluded to retaliation. But I think it doesn't really change the equation in that regard. France and UK have been more open to using the weapons they provide to target infrastructure within Russia, and that has elicited some stark reactions from Moscow. When it comes to Moscow, it is not, again, very new, the fact that they are warning of retaliation for strikes against Russia. There has been nuclear saber rattling from really the beginning of this conflict, and Russia knows that it resonates in some capitals that are wary of escalation, but in other capitals, the fact that there has been these threats since the beginning, since at every stage of escalation, since the beginning of the conflict, there is this feeling that, in fact, Russia knows that it's not in its interest to start a broader conflict with NATO. Hence, there can be they can beef up their support to Ukrainian armed forces.
And how do you see Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to Beijing? It's at a critical time. Apparently, Russia now has the upper hand in its war against Ukraine. And this visit is happening also with a backdrop of the United States continuously warning China not to help Russia.
Right. I think we shouldn't interpret too much the timing. This was a long time planned visit. Vladimir Putin is paying back the visit that Xi Jinping made to Moscow. So I think there's definitely a strategic dimension to this visit, and the two countries will certainly reaffirm their so-called without limit partnerships. But I think, and recent declarations by Vladimir Putin hint to that they will try to show the world, especially the so-called global south, that they are responsible players. So Vladimir Putin said that he wants to show that he's ready to negotiate with Ukraine. On the other hand, Xi Jinping was in Europe recently. He made clear that he has no intention that he's to provide weapons. I mean, to be directly military engaged in this conflict. So of course we know that there is heavy support from China from non-directly military equipment, so-called dual-use equipments that are critical for Russia to continue its war. So that is why there is strong pressure, not only from the US, but in fact that was reiterated in Europe when Xi Jinping visited Paris, and clear messages were sent also by President Macron and Ursula von der Leyen in this regard.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Mathieu Droin, joining us live from Washington, D.C. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thanks for having me.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.